Pretend zero. And we're live. Awesome. Welcome to this episode of Fitness Unfiltered. Today, you may see, if you're watching on YouTube, we have Scott Baptie with us. He is the author of 101 Ways to Lose Weight and Never Find It Again. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Scott. And would you introduce yourself and tell us about the book?
Thanks, Emma and Mike. Well, first off, I'm offended that you didn't introduce me as your friend. Just the author, as if I'm just some random...
I thought that would give you more like prestige. Now you're an author.
No,
a best-selling author.
You have to call everyone my good friend. Otherwise, it sounds like you don't even follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, I always wondered, sometimes when I listen to podcasts and everybody's like, my good friend, I'm like, you've never met this person.
I'd just like to say, Scott and I have actually met in real life.
Yeah,
several
times.
You made like 8 years, maybe?
Yeah.
Long time.
Anyway, I'll give you the intro. For people who don't know me, I would say I'm a sports nutritionist by trade. I've got a master's in sports nutrition. I'm predominantly a weight loss coach now. I host a podcast. I cook high protein recipes. And I'm trying to remove BS from the fitness industry, much like you guys, and make it really easy for people to improve their health and fitness. And yeah, without getting confused by all the misinformation and garbage there is out there, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so we want to speak today mostly about fitness fads, and I wanted to touch on ways that you can sort of tell if something's a bit of a fad.
Yeah.
Is there any, for you, both of you can give your points across, like red lights when you see something, you're like, oh, okay. Because I know for me, one of the maybe less obvious ones, but still pretty obvious, is when a weight loss diet or some shake fad says you can lose a specific amount of weight without ever knowing who you are or how much weight you've got to lose or anything about you. You can lose 10 pounds in a week or whatever the claim is. So is there anything for you that sort of screams like red light when you're looking at diets?
Yeah, I like that one. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That's pretty much what you said. If it's endorsed by a celebrity, I'd probably start raising some eyebrows. Not always, but if most of the time. If it's sold by your neighbour Karen and she makes a commission when you buy it, that's probably also a warning light. If it's predominantly supplement based as well, is another one to be cautious of. If it bans a load of foods, and if it doesn't actually explain how you lose weight, so if it doesn't mention the words calorie deficit, or if it doesn't even talk about calories, let's clarify, you don't have to count calories to lose weight, but trying to say that it's not about calories, it's about the hormones is completely misleading and incorrect. So yeah, just be skeptical. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That's the big one.
Mike? To add?
Yeah, I mean, I've always struggled a little bit to kind of to tell the difference, and I think a lot of the time, what's happened, I think more recently as well, is it because all the faddy sort of diets have taken off so much and have been such good business. I think a lot of the people who are selling actual decent quality, online coaching and nutrition coaching and things like that, have kind of resorted to a lot of marketing techniques that kind of almost make their diets look quite similar to those sorts of diets. And I think sometimes it can actually be genuinely difficult. I often, I have a lot of people that I know who offer things like online coaching and coaching packages and transformation packages. And sometimes I look at their marketing and I think if I was brand new kind of 5 years ago, I might have actually thought that this was rubbish, because it does actually look like it works. And because I think you can really easily get into the mentality that anything that works has to be really difficult, and like nothing can work because everything that you've tried has been rubbish and has been faddy, and you can't stick to it and all of that kind of stuff, when actually when you do see a lot of these things, they look like that they might be faddy, but actually in reality they are just people focusing on a calorie deficit.
Yeah, which is exactly why I kind of wanted to touch on this, because it is hard to tell now. And actually, as a coach on the other side, it's quite hard to market yourself in a way that, is attractive to people to do, yet not be seen as a bit faddy. So like, transformation pictures are a bit faddy, and if you're like, oh, this is what you can do in 6 weeks. Yeah, that's what that person has done. And if it's really good transformation, it probably means that, yeah, in 6 weeks they did over restrict. And is that sustainable? Possibly not. Like, do we know what they did after that? Was there a plan for maintenance? All these questions, like, you don't know, and it can come across as a bit of a fad diet. So it is like a hard line to cross. But I would say the things that Scott's saying, like, if you're wondering, like, is this coach or program a fad diet? Like, can they explain why they're doing what they're doing? Are they open to your questions and discussion, or are they like, well, this is what we do? And are they happy to say, yeah, do you know what, like, working with so-and-so or doing X diet would work for you. I think, my program is better because X, Y, and Z, but all these things will work, and here's why they work. And just being a bit more open-minded about it, you can sort of tell, okay, actually, this person knows what they're speaking about. They're not trying to just take all my money. They care about long-term health as well. So it can be hard to sell, especially from the outside.
And the biggest problem is people that sound like they know what they're talking about. For the general layperson, I mean, I remember, I've told this story before, but when I was like in the early days of kind of my weight loss, I remember being on a diet that cut out wheat, sugar, and dairy. And I said to the person who was kind of in charge of it, why am I doing that? Why can't I have any wheat? Oh, well, you see, because of evolution, humans aren't really evolved to digest it. So we just don't digest it very well. So actually, you end up putting more weight, you end up with more bloating, you end up more hungry. So there's all these different mechanisms by which wheat actually is responsible for making you put on weight. So if you cut it out, you're much more likely to lose weight. I am a doctor. I am a qualified doctor. I have done several degrees. I am like supposed to be intelligent, and I was like, "Oh right, okay, I'll do that then."
Yeah,
and then
that makes sense.
Yeah.
The same is true for the insulin hypothesis. Like, on paper, it does make sense.
Yeah.
That's not how it works, but it tells a very good story, and you can claim that. It is true. Insulin makes you store nutrients,
and then when you
away,
exactly. And then when you lose weight by doing that, because usually you are a massive bread lover and cannot control the amount of bread you eat when you eat bread, you then go, oh, look, it's true, science. And then you start telling other people. And it's not, and I think a lot of the people who peddle this stuff, they're not doing it because they don't know it's not true. They don't know that, that they're convinced by what they've seen. And they're like, well, I've just done this. It just worked. So of course it's correct. And I think that's what's so hard is, like, I think if you were battling against people who were just mean and selfish and just wanted to make loads of money and pretend that they had stuff that worked that doesn't, then it would be very straightforward. But I think in reality, because people are so passionate about it and they genuinely believe in a lot of these fads, then I've had conversations with Herbalife reps, people who I know, who genuinely believe in the product and believe in the stuff because they've seen such results from how it's helped them. And you can't argue with it, because actually there's nothing that they're saying is untrue. It's just correlation rather than causation. So anyway,
I've got a question. I've got follow up on what you said, Mike, about asking those reps, but I want to share an insulin story with you guys, which is exactly along the lines of what we talked about. I remember when I was indoctrinated by the paleo diet, so this would have been 2011, before I knew any better, sitting around the dinner table with my family and telling them that you shouldn't be eating carbohydrates because Paleolithic man wasn't used to the big surge in insulin that came as a result. And then my mum said, well, why is that bad? And I remember at the time, I didn't know the physiology behind it. I was just repeating what I read in the books and podcasts. And I was like, wow, it just is. But I did the same. I thought I was being clever talking about insulin, but again, I didn't actually know what I was talking about. But what you said, Mike, about the reps fully believing in their product, I'm always interested when you see these outlandish claims somewhere, whether it's some shake diet or the carnivore diet or anything that us three go, oh my God, how can you honestly think that is sustainable? Now, do these people, or what's the percentage, do you think, of the people promoting these diets who either actually believe that it's legitimate and it is the elixir of health, or do they know it's a crock of shit, but they're just doing it because it makes them money? What do you think that percentage is?
I'd like to believe that actually a lot of people believe in it, because I think it's not hard to believe in it. And I'm talking specifically about a good friend of mine who I got invited on Facebook to a Herbalife party by a really good friend of mine, somebody
that sounds like the worst party in the world.
I know. Well, it's actually somebody who's a really close friend of mine who I absolutely adore this person. She's an amazing human being, and I've known her for a really long time, and I know that she would never do anything that was, you know, that was just kind of for money or something like that. So I messaged her and said, you know, like, I've been doing a lot of reading and research in nutrition recently, and I've learned a lot about Herbalife and about the business practices and about the stuff. You know, so I'm completely happy to keep my mouth shut about this. But if it's something that you want to have a chat about, just let me know, because I kind of thought I can't not say anything. And we met up and had a chat, and it was funny because the stuff that she said to me about Herbalife was exactly the stuff that I say to other people about my gym and about the community that I've had from my gym and the results I've had from my gym. And you can kind of apply the same logic. You don't need my gym to lose weight. You don't need an expensive gym membership, etc., etc. But I have found that has set me on the right path by giving me parameters. And, you know, she was saying how she had a very mobile job, so she would previously have just had like a bag of Haribo in her car, and that's what she just would have nibbled on kind of all day and then had a meal in the evening. Whereas now, because of the structure that the Herbalife diet had given her, she was having, you know, granola in the morning, and she was having different kind of fruits and vegetables and yogurts and all this kind of stuff. And her nutrition had improved. She felt better. She felt healthier. And she kind of recognized that it wasn't specifically the actual product that was doing it, but it was the framework that it had given her. And I was sitting here, you know, ready to kind of have this really logical discussion about it. And I was going, well, I can't really argue with what you've said to me here, because it clearly has worked for you. But I just don't, you know, and I think that's why there's such a huge difference between Joe Bloggs, who doesn't have nutrition qualifications or PT qualifications or medical qualifications, kind of selling Herbalife, and people like PTs pushing it, for example. You know, I don't know. I think that there are some people for sure who know that it's that what they're selling. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not specifically talking about Herbalife. I'm using Herbalife as a generic example. What else do I have to say legally? I don't have any views on Herbalife. But kind of just in terms of fad diets, I don't know, because, you know, like you were saying, Scott, we've seen how easy it is for us to pontificate about these things that have worked for us, and it's only by then realizing that there's more ways to skin cats. I mean, I was just the same about paleo, except I was like a year or two later, so even less excusable. But we do that, don't we? We see something great, and we really want our friends and people that we know to benefit from it the way that we've benefited from it, and we don't necessarily see the wood for the trees. But maybe that's a very idealistic worldview, and I just want to believe that everyone is kind and helpful and doesn't want to screw people over, but I don't know.
Well, I agree in some sense. Like, first of all, about the, you know, do people know that they're selling something that's, you know, true, or do they believe in it or not? Like, maybe not, but I also think if that's your job and that's what you're selling, you shouldn't be naive to how it works or how it doesn't work. You know, there's not really an excuse to be naive to it, in my opinion. Like, if you're saying that you're a nutritionist, which Herbalife people do, that's sort of their title, I'm pretty sure, then that's your job. You should know about it. You should be able to discuss it, and you should know about nutrition. But that aside, I think what you've made brilliant points about, we should really, as coaches and as people trying to help other people lead healthy lifestyles, look at the benefits of these quote-unquote fad diets. Because, like, the results that people have got on Slimming World, they've literally changed people's lives. Yet, people are like, oh, Slimming World's stupid, blah, blah, blah. Like, one, that just alienates people. But two, there's huge benefits to what Slimming World do. And then we need to look at what we can take from that. So they provide amazing structure. people don't particularly like. Some people don't like counting calories, so they've changed it a bit. So you're counting points instead, and maybe that's something that we could structure better in our coaching, because it's obviously working for people. There's a huge community support. They get all this stuff. What are they doing well that's getting results? And yes, there are problems with it, but can we take those problems out, use the structure that they've created, show they've got these results. Why are they getting those results? I think there's a lot we can learn from, Herbalife or Slimming World or any Weight Watchers, whatever they are. And I think we are too quick to be like, oh, that's stupid, named diet. Oh, it doesn't mean anything, blah, blah, blah. People have got amazing results in this. So I think we can learn a lot from that.
I think, your points are totally valid, but I wish that they focused a little bit more on the principles of how these programs work as opposed to the method, because then again, that's going to give you more sustainability. So if you think the reason you lost weight is because you counted sins, then you've been doing something for several years without really understanding how it works. But if you realize you lost weight because the sins equate to calories and you consume fewer calories than you did previously, then that just gives you a very basic toolkit to then go and apply it to any other approach that you will enjoy and that you can stick to.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, my point is,
you can't sell that.
I'm not saying go to Slimming World, but I am saying,
totally.
What can we as coaches take from their approach that has got brilliant results, and then obviously change a little bit and put into our own practice?
It's funny that there's no calorie deficit world, and I think it's just not that exciting.
Does
it? Exactly. And I also wonder if you get and I wonder if this is a simple analogy, but I wonder if there's a Tresemme podcast where people are saying, I don't understand why people are using these really expensive hair products that you don't need to use and that are unnecessary for you to have shiny hair, when you could just be using normal shampoo. I always think it's really interesting, when it comes to products and kind of integrity and stuff like that. The fitness world sort of seems to be although it's seems to be an arena that's one of the least regulated, it seems to be the one that people bring so much passion when it comes to kind of having not selling things to people that aren't true, etc. Whereas we sell things to people that aren't true in every other arena, and nobody seems to have a problem about it. I guess it's because it's people's health, so people have, people think it's more sacred as well. I don't really know what my point is with this, but it just popped into my head.
We spoke about this before, didn't we?
Yeah.
But effectively, if you sell a car to someone and you manage to sort of, I don't know, get a really good deal, it's way over the asking price, you're patted on the back, oh, you're a great salesman.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're selling Herbalife, you're an ass. I
think it's because also you're kind of, you're targeting people based on their insecurities rather than based on their desires. So when you sell people a nice car, I suppose that targets their insecurities a little bit as well, because they want to drive a flashy nice car. But
I don't know, even say it was a hair loss product, and it actually does nothing. I don't know, people don't see it as it's not, it's a scam, but I don't know why, but there's not that, you're a bad person for doing that. It's kind of oh, wow, they've made a lot of money from selling something crap. That's kind of impressive. Whereas when it's maybe it's just because we're so far in the industry and maybe hairdressers would be oh, that's a scam. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. We should listen to some hair podcasts, really. Do some research.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any, Maybe that's a new niche for us.
Yeah, exactly. We could go into that. I mean, I'm just looking around at our hair, and I have to say, we've done all right.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Scott actually a question, if that's okay, about eating like his grandma.
Yeah, so there's a chapter in the book called "Don't Eat Like My Grandma." Basically, she's the Usain Bolt of plate clearing, and we honestly, on Christmas Day when we were serving the tables, serving people sitting down, my granny got served last because if she got it first, she'd be done. So it's just become a bit of a running joke in the family that she sort of will sit down. And I looked into this because I heard it mentioned by some other coaches saying, slow down the rate that you eat food. And I thought, God, there can't really be anything in this. Surely it doesn't actually make much of a difference. But yeah, there is actually some pretty good research on it. And there's various things you can do which seemingly sound ridiculous, like increase your chew to swallow ratio. And, you want to have 20 chews before you swallow the mouthful of food, or things like that. Or just simply put your fork and knife down now and again, take a little bit of a breather. Don't be distracted while you're eating. So don't sit and watch in front of the TV because you just wolf the food down. You're missing out on hunger cues and so on. So yeah, there is actually some surprisingly good research on it. So that is one of the habits that you could do, which again makes you become more mindful and hopefully helps you consume fewer calories, is just eat slower.
So Mike, have you done that with your intuitive eating? Has that been mentioned?
Well, I was going to say, I think you answered my question, because I was going to ask if the evidence was based on like the idea of the mindful eating side of things, or whether it was if there was anything physiological in terms of like hormonal and fullness and stuff like that. But I think you answered that anyway, and so it's more like the mindfulness, I guess. But it's funny because I went to a talk on mindful eating about a year ago, and this was kind of so. Scott, I don't know if you will know this, but I'm basically doing a bit of an intuitive eating experiment at the moment. It's been Christmas. It's not going particularly well. But I'm...
How many mince pies the other day?
I had 7, but to be honest, I didn't eat all... So this might have been the what has helped in terms of... It's having that recognition and that really trying to focus on the fullness cues. It's changed the times that I've eaten, and it's changed certainly how I'm eating, because I'm kind of just a bit more mindful about it. So I ate the outsides of the minced pies, but I didn't eat the middle. So I kind of felt like, it's a step in the right direction. But I went to this talk on mindful eating, and it was fascinating to me because at the time I was deep in tracking, and I was like, but it doesn't really matter if I feel full or not, because I'm stopping when my calories have run out, not when when I feel full or not. So it's all right. So once I've prepared that amount of food, that's what I'm eating. That's what I've tracked in my FitnessPal. So who cares if I chew it a load of times and feel full or put my fork down or whatever? It doesn't really matter. But then actually you then realise then when you do try and not track, or when I have now tried to not track, it does, it is like I sit there thinking, gosh, am I full? Am I hungry? Don't know. Am I eating just because it's 1 o'clock? Or am I actually, do I want to eat? And then sometimes I just won't eat for ages, and then I'll go, but I think I'm really hungry, and what's going on? And actually you realise that you almost switch, and that comes back to what you're saying about Slimming World as well, Scott, with regards to kind of, you're eating because it's sins and it's points and all of that kind of stuff. You're not eating because you're hungry or you're full. And this is what I'm trying to establish with my experiment is, have I just got a skewed version of hunger and satiety, or do I just not care about hunger and satiety because I really like eating food and I just want to eat regardless of whether I'm hungry? So it's to be determined.
Yeah, it's an interesting point as well. And hunger signals come and go even when you don't eat.
Yeah.
If you've ever tried like a 24-hour fast or even a 12-hour
yeah,
fast,
for sure.
At lunchtime you'll get hungry, and then say you were busy, and you're like, oh, actually I'm not really hungry anymore. So, but should you eat again because you've not had lunch yet? Or we've had a big discussion on intuitive eating on the last podcast, but yeah, there are like certain aspects that you think, what does this actually mean? So, Scott, I'd be really interested to know your take on intuitive eating.
I would say at the moment I'm an intuitive eater, in the sense that I don't track, I'm not following a set meal plan and so on, but I think I wouldn't have had the knowledge of food and what's in food and creating balanced meals and regulating my energy intake, based on my training, had I not had the experience of tracking macros or following meal plans and so on. So I think I like the idea of intuitive eating. I think it's fantastic. And I know certain people maybe have obsessive personalities. Tracking macros is probably a terrible idea. But for some people, it works for them. So I think it's another tool that could be very useful for certain people, just like tracking macros is, or following a meal plan, or following habits, or whatever. But to say that something like tracking macros, you shouldn't follow it, or it always leads to obsessive behavior, I think that's, again, not correct. I think it's just finding where the person is and what they're at. So yeah, intuitive eating is just an approach that can work really well for people. But some people might not like it.
Something that you almost said it there, but like you like graduate to, as in, yeah, you say you're intuitive eating now, but I know fine well, if I asked you how many calories you ate yesterday, you could give me a rough estimate of that, because you know. Okay, maybe not, but like...
Well, I would, because I know that generally I don't gain weight, and I know that I need round about 3,000 calories a day to maintain my weight, so I must be eating round about it.
So lucky!
Oh. You need to get one of these for the little step tracker. Get the steps up. And,
you can say an arm.
More calories.
But yeah.
But yeah, I guess my point is that you've got this knowledge behind you. You know what's in food. You know you can estimate like that. Oh, that's a chicken breast. I know how many calories in that. That's X amount of rice is like a usual portion. Whatever you're eating, it might not be chicken and rice. It could be a little bit more exciting. But my point is, you kind of know what you're eating and where you're at. Whereas someone who's first coming into dieting and you tell them to eat intuitively without any structure, maybe you could work on behaviors instead, but I think it's great to have had the background of macro tracking, or at least, weighing out things, even for a couple of days. Like, wow, that's an actual portion size. Like, it still surprises me, some things. I'm like, oh, that's what a portion is.
But that's what I think. Like this was the point that we made in our intuitive podcast, in our intuitive eating podcast, was that actually intuitive eating is an intervention like any other nutritional intervention. And actually, if you're doing it under the guidance of a coach and they're teaching you how to, it's not just like kind of you suddenly wake up one day and go, right, I'm trying intuitive eating today, and then you just do it. I think the whole point is you need some form of structure to it. Like you said, you can't just go into it unstructured. I was also going to ask another question of Scott, if that is okay. In your ways to lose weight and never find it again, I don't want to kind of obviously give away the ending of the book, but what is the focus on never finding it again? What's your kind of long-term solution to lifestyle change? Because that's where I'm at the moment, is that I've lost the weight that I've wanted to lose, and now I'm in a position where I want to kind of make it long term. I don't want to put it back on. I want to kind of establish good, healthy food habits, etc. So what's kind of your advice there?
Well, there isn't actually the end page. The whole idea of it does tie into this idea of sustainability. So it's 101 habits that will either increase your calorie expenditure or decrease your calorie intake. So a lot of it, there's a whole chapter focused on inclusion and not exclusion, which I think is quite important, so that people are focused on, what can you actually eat, and thinking about all the extra food you can, as opposed to thinking, I can't have chocolate and so on. And again, my message is always, sort of control what you're eating, don't cut out entire groups of food. So there isn't a chapter that says, habit 1, don't eat carbs. Habit 2, just eat meat. It's none of this BS. It's always understand, like we talked about, the principles of weight loss. So it comes from a calorie deficit. You consume fewer calories than you burn throughout the course of the day, and you'll lose weight. And it's creating ways to do this, and also it gives you an understanding why a fat burning pill probably is not going to work, or why you don't need to do the keto diet, and why we're always telling people to walk more or stand at their desk or take the lift and so on. Because then once you have this understanding of principles, you can then apply different methods to help you do that, and make you, in the very first page, I think I talk about how you won't be fooled by pseudoscientific fad diets again, because you'll be able to say, right, what happens here? Okay, it creates a calorie deficit because I'm only drinking coffee. And you'll think, right, hang on, this isn't healthy. So yeah, that's the plan, is to just understand the basics of how you lose weight, so that if you, like, say, gain weight a little bit in the future, you know how to bring it back down again, or you just know how, like you said, Mike, to just maintain it and not cut out a load of things you don't need to, and how to be active. And the main thing is also doing things you actually like, because I think at this time of year, there's the whole, I need to start exercising, I'll go running. Like, well, do you actually like running? No, I hate it. Well, don't do it. And say we always talk about lifting weights and it's so good for helping maintain muscle mass, and it's it's good for strength and power and all this. But if you actually hate the idea of lifting weights or going to a gym, don't do it.
Yeah.
If you don't like broccoli, don't eat it. Simple. If you don't like fish, don't force yourself to eat it because somebody says you should be eating oily fish 3 times a week. So I think we need to get out of this idea of doing unpleasant things because it's deemed to be the healthy thing to do. I mean, healthy is it's multifaceted, and I think you can certainly get into amazing shape or good shape or feel better or just get healthier, whatever your goal is, by exercising in a way you like and eating things that you like.
Yeah, I love it. Love it.
I really like the approach that you said at the start as well. Is less about what you can't eat and more about what you can eat. Like, what can I fuel my body with? Loads of great healthy foods and within my calories, maybe, rather than I can't eat this and this, and focusing on restriction. I think that's definitely a good approach to dieting.
Yeah, because you understand you need to restrict your calories, otherwise you won't lose weight. You can't eat more. And people say, "Oh, I'm eating more calories and I'm losing weight." It's like, no, you're not. This is the whole
food, maybe.
Yeah, food is not calories.
I said that about paleo. I was like, I'm definitely eating more calories, and I'm losing loads of weight. Look.
Yeah.
I also took up running that month as well. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, there we go.
Did you like running?
No, I didn't. Do you know what? I ran I ran 3 5Ks a week for I think nearly a couple of years. Like that was my exercise program for a good while, because running and paleo was what worked for me to lose weight. And
Did you do it barefoot?
No, I didn't go that far. I didn't go that far.
Not full on paleo running.
Actually, no, I didn't. But because I still am so sold on creature comforts, I just used to do these 5Ks on a treadmill. And I would try and I'd choose a classic album that I loved to try and, to listen to while running, and that would kind of try and get me through, or I'd make a playlist or whatever. But it was so sad because I did not enjoy running, and I just did it for ages. And it was only that was on the assumption, because I'd kind of tried everything except for gym training, because I had just assumed that I wouldn't like weight training because it just wasn't really my thing. And I would feel embarrassed to do it in front of other people and all of that kind of stuff. So I just kind of ditched that and just did loads of running. And everyone was like, "Oh yeah, but you get addicted and you'll end up really loving running." I was like, "When?" Because it just never happened. But now that I don't do it because I have to, I will occasionally go to kind of park run or something like that, and I do enjoy doing a 5K or something. But at the time, when you do stuff because you're forced to, it's the same with I think food exclusion, like you were saying, Scott. Is it the minute somebody tells you can't have something, that's all you want? Whereas if it's inclusive in the diet, and you're just limiting the amount that you have, it makes so much more sense. And that was definitely my revolution when it came to dieting, was realizing that actually everything works. You just have to choose what your favorite thing is to do, and that's probably
I think they're all tools, and I guess Scott's offering 101 different tools to use.
That's a lot of tools.
That's a lot of tools.
Some obviously carry more power than others.
But I guess my point is as well, you don't have, say low carb works for you for a while, but then you're going to Italy. Okay, maybe you're going to eat more carbs. You can use these tools at different times if you understand why they're working. So I'm just about to go to Australia, literally later today, which will be fun. But I'm probably going to intermittent fast a bit while I'm traveling, because I will have bigger meals with much higher calories in, and I'll be eating out every day. So I'll probably skip breakfast most days.
Yeah.
But
Or you could,
I
if you're
think
eating out every day, you could follow the 2 from 4 restaurant rule, which is one of the ways.
Tell me
The 2 from
this.
4 restaurant rule. So your 4 options: starter, main course, pudding, alcohol, and you
Right.
have 2 from the 4.
Okay,
Oh, wow.
So simple, right?
That's quite cool. So
It's
what you'd
simple.
have? Okay, I get.
It's-
Yeah.
Again, the idea of it is just a simple rule to somehow, reduce your intake rather than being like, okay, I'll have this for starter, main course, and a drink. You just have 2 of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
I love that.
And before I forget this, Mike, I know we've kind of moved on, but I'm going to bring it right. It's not my podcast, but here we go. You mentioned how running on a treadmill compared to outside. Did you know that I think the percentage is you burn about 13% more calories running outside compared to a
I knew
treadmill?
it.
And do you know this the single main reason for this?
Because it's more miserable, because you're sadder
Nope.
and
Nope.
more wet. No, what?
Nope. And you're guessing cold, Emma, aren't you?
Yeah.
No, wind resistance.
Ah. Wow.
I heard that you have to put the treadmill up to 2.5 to make it similar to running outside.
Yeah,
Gosh.
and it's due to wind resistance blowing
wow.
against you.
Yeah, but did you have the fan in your face, Mike?
Yeah, no.
Oh.
With
Yeah,
the
a wind
window open
machine.
on the treadmill.
Just looking at
Right,
myself in the mirror while running at the treadmill. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Actually, that is very, very interesting.
I like the 2 from 4 rule.
I like that. I'm going to ask one more question about it because we talked about this on our previous podcast, and there seems to be a kind of a growing trend to kind of, rather than saying, well, 2 from 4, and these are kind of methods of losing weight and about keeping weight off and stuff like that. There seems to be this growing trend to say, guys, don't worry about it. You don't need to lose weight. Have all the food.
Yeah, Scott, so we've spoken about this in the last podcast, but have you noticed this in the fitness industry that's almost like tabooed to say, like, to diet now? They're like, do you know what? Love yourself, girl. Like,
Yeah, I got this. I did a talk for I wasn't British Pharmacological. It was some society. I can't remember who it was, and it was in Edinburgh. And somebody, I got into a bit of a debate by this person was calling me, I was talking about health and so on. She was like, oh, is it not two-faced because you promote weight loss at the same time? And you're like, what is the second biggest preventable cause of cancer? Anyone?
Well, according to Cancer Research UK, obesity,
there we go.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, obesity. So I think there are countless studies that show that if you are overweight, if you reduce your body fat, positive markers of health improve, right? You're less likely to get diabetes, your heart health improves, we could go on for ages. So I totally understand why we should stop comparing ourselves to professional fitness models and using physiques on Instagram as a sort of a baseline of what's normal, because these physiques are just not normal, and you do not need to have a six-pack, and saying that you should be a size 6 or whatever is ridiculous and often extremely unhealthy. It's quite ironic because people think 6-pack equals health, but in order to do it, it's probably not that healthy psychologically or physically. But I think telling people that you don't need to lose weight is also unhealthy, for the obvious reasons outlined by these thousands and thousands of journals.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems is that the people that are most likely to listen to that advice or that resonates with them most are people that have struggled with weight loss in the past and probably do need to lose weight. Whereas, it tends to be, what did you say, Mike? Look at what they do,
Look at
not
what
what
they do, not what they say. Yeah, Jamie said that. Yeah.
All 5 hours, like fairly lean individuals being like, don't diet, don't worry about it, you'll be fine. Right, none of you are obese. None of you have these problems. Like, you're obviously fine not dieting because you're already lean.
Yeah.
And maintain that, you don't need to diet. Other people do need to diet.
Yeah, I think I can. One point I want to make on this is, you can, if rather than obsessing with weight loss as the goal, admittedly, okay, weight loss is going to be the big overriding picture of why you're potentially embracing a change of the way you eat and how you exercise. But by focusing on, again, I feel like a total arse, but I mentioned this in the book. You focus on the process and not the outcome. Yeah. So rather than being like, oh, I lost a pound this week. Oh, no, I gained a pound this week. Oh, it's a disaster. Oh, I'll try and lose 2 pounds next week. Focus on what you're actually doing at the time, right? And maybe rather than think about weight loss, you could say, right, can I increase the weight I'm lifting in the gym?
Yeah.
How consistent can I be, whatever the rule might be? How consistent can I be eating vegetables every meal? How often in a week can I prepare my meals? And probably as a result of this focus, your weight will come down without you specifically trying to lose weight. You're focusing on developing behaviors and, again, process and not outcome.
Yeah. I think that is brilliant advice, and that's definitely one of the main things that kind of worked for me without kind of even realizing it as well. So it's I think it's so important for everybody to remember who their audience is, and I think we spoke a little bit before we started recording about the olden days of kind of Twitter and sort of fitness advice on Twitter, and I remember I used to follow kind of a group of people on Twitter whose big thing was kind of, having abs while eating pizza. And so which is great. If you've got abs, you can eat pizza. Anyone can eat pizza. I'm not saying anyone shouldn't eat pizza, but at the end of the day, there were these times where I was just like, well, these guys eat pizza and still lose weight, so I can eat pizza and still lose weight. Actually, at that time, it was okay for me to not eat so much pizza. Like, I wasn't just overweight. I was incredibly unhealthy, and actually, I kind of feel like sometimes I think that it's quite a big achievement to have lost a lot of weight, and sometimes I feel slightly insulted by all these people saying, "Oh, you don't need to lose weight." Well, actually, I did, and I think it was quite important that I did that. And actually, my life generally is so much better in a lot of ways because I've lost weight, and not necessarily because I've lost weight, but because I've changed those lifestyle factors. But you can't. I think if you're kind of overweight and underactive, if you do all of those processes, you are going to lose weight. You are going to become leaner. You are going to probably feel more confident in how you look, as well as whatever people say, whatever people kind of feel about how happy they are with their size, etc. You do, and I'm not saying like to an unhealthy way. So I'm not saying become underweight. I'm not saying you need to have abs to feel good about yourself. I'm just saying that I think generally, if you are a size that you deem to be healthy, you're probably likely to be happier with it as well. Because if you feel that you're not healthy, that's also going to make you unhappy. Even if you have no focus on vanity or any of those other aspects, if you think that you are unhealthy and that you're more likely to die younger because of all of these potentially preventable conditions, it's going to make you sad.
Yeah. I think I can totally understand the phrase of being anti-diet culture, which is being used a lot at the moment. And I totally have issues with these 6 pounds in 6 days and shakes and pills and potions and this idea of extreme restriction for a short period of time before going back to normal eating. That is something that we need to educate people and hopefully we can move away from. But that seem to be getting tied into the same message of, oh, you don't actually need to lose weight, which then can become misleading like for everything we just said. So I think it's important to separate the two of saying, yes, there are many health benefits to be had from losing weight healthily and by doing it sustainably, and you can do so without being on a set, rigid diet. But I think it is key to separate the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. One thing you touched on, Mike, which I think is always like a good point to touch on, and mainly because it like resonates with me so much, is seeing these people. I'm going to use Scott as an example because he just said he needs 3,000 calories to maintain his weight, and you were sort of saying, oh, you'll see so and so on Instagram eating a pizza with a 6-pack, and you're like, oh, well then I can do that. And that gets completely misinterpreted, and it'd be like me watching Scott eat a pizza, which probably fits in his calories for the day quite easily. He can still have 2 other meals, whereas if I eat a pizza, that's like basically all my calories for the full day.
Yeah.
And that's a huge consequence for what I can eat for the rest of the day if I don't want to put on weight, or what I can eat for the rest of the week if I'm smart and like move my calories around. But I think just knowing that, I don't know, like just not to compare yourself to some big muscly Instagram man who may have 3,000 calories to play with when you're trying to diet on 2,000.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I remember an issue that I had with this. So that I like to wind. You've seen recently how I'm posting about eating butteries and McDonald's and so on, just to try and be the sort of extreme version of, or the complete polarization of clean eating. And I'm not saying, we should all go out and eat McDonald's and, just have 6 butteries every day and you'll lose weight. But it's just the idea of you can eat these foods, and it's trying to make people realize that nothing has to be excluded. But I can totally see how that can be misinterpreted, because I remember, Mike, when you talked about back in the day, so when it was all the if it fits your macros and Pop-Tarts. Everyone was eating Pop-Tarts, myself included. Yeah. I would have posted probably a photo of me eating a Pop-Tart with my shirt off. And I remember someone saying to me, these Pop-Tarts look great. How can I start including them in my meal plan? And he just perceived it as Pop-Tarts were healthy, and it's something they should be eating. And when this person probably shouldn't be eating Pop-Tarts, because from terms of energy, the amount of calories coming in for the size on the plate, was not a smart food for them to be eating. And that's how I think, we have to be careful with it. And I know myself, I am guilty of that, sometimes not explaining in depth. But then you struggle, I suppose, nowadays with social media, because you have to post interesting content. But if you repeat your same message, if you disclaimer, I'm fully blah blah blah, folk will get bored of it. So it is trying to find that balance. It's tricky.
It doesn't sound quite as snappy, does it?
Well, this is it. But
and I like your point about you can eat McDonald's. It's not clean eating, and foods don't have to be quote unquote clean, and you can include all these foods. But like you're saying, it can get. And everyone's message can get sort of misconstrued, and it is hard. Like, it's a bit of an art to what you're putting out, and then realizing who your audience are, and is that appropriate? Like, if all your audience are females trying to lose weight that are quite sedentary, like putting out eating McDonald's, like they can't do that on a regular basis.
I think also you've got to take a bit of responsibility for how you interpret social media as well. So like, even when I'm telling that story about those guys, they didn't know that I was following them and thinking that it was all right for me to eat pizza. They were just going about their lives happily, taking selfies and documenting their workouts. Because I tell you what, I wasn't copying their workouts. And that's, it's kind of, people are selective in what they want to see. And actually it was my responsibility that I knew deep down that wasn't going to help me lose weight. But actually in reality, I was more concerned with finding an excuse to eat pizza at the time. And and it's kind of, I think what that speaks more to is not, yes, people have to remember their audience, but also people have to remember who they are as well. And this is why what Scott was saying earlier about not comparing yourself to these people on Instagram is so important, because actually it's more about you being comfortable with what is your own journey and making your own rules and making your own format of how you do things, rather than just eating a Pop-Tart because someone who has a 6-pack eats a Pop-Tart. I mean, I'm sure they do a lot of things that you might not want to do as well. But
it is true. Like, you see them, I don't know, eating a Pop-Tart, but then you don't see the fact that they're a PT on their feet all day, work from 6 in the morning till 10 at night, train twice a day. All these things, have a lot of muscle mass, probably taller than you, way more than you, have all these factors that. And like, that's pretty much the perfect thing you say, like, what I didn't copy was their workouts. So you just take what you want, like, eating a pizza looks fun. That really long workout.
Or the fact they're injecting copious substances into their body.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, no. Hashtag natty. Right. Are we, have we covered everything we wanted to?
I feel that is a good place to wrap things up, discussing fake natties.
Brilliant. Scott, tell us where everyone can find you on Facebook, Instagram, about your book, where they can buy it, all of the stuff.
Well, if
obviously not your podcast. No, joking. And your podcast.
We did this at SFN, and you gave me a punch in the arm for being big-headed, but I just said Google me, and it's not being big-headed. It's because if you type me into Google, You can choose what platform you'd like to follow me on. So Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But yeah, the book obviously is the cool one. If anybody would like to go and buy that, that would move you to epic legend. So if you just search on Amazon or go into Waterstones or whatever, and it's called 101 Ways to Lose Weight and Never Find It Again, that would be very, very fun.
Cool, and we'll include some links as well on the show notes. We also have to give a little bit of a hello
we'll put a link to Google so people can
it's www.google.com or .co.uk. But I just also wanted to say hello to Dan, who isn't with us today, and we haven't really explained that. We haven't replaced him with Scott. He just couldn't make it.
He didn't like Scott. Refused. Come on.
Not true.
No,
that's not
He's
true.
really, really busy doing actual work.
Scheduling conflicts and all that.
Yeah. But he sends his love and regards and best wishes.
Yeah. Dan is the ginger spice of this episode, but this episode only.
What was this? No, he's the Michelle. Anyway, have you stopped recording yet?
No, shall I stop?
Yeah.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye.